Thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Tamika Moss. I'm the founder and CEO of All Home. And I want to first thank all of our many partners, community leaders, and those who have helped us develop this regional action plan that we are releasing today. I particularly want to acknowledge the members of our Regional Impact Council who have tirelessly spent the last 12 months coming together over countless meetings via Zoom to lend their wisdom and insights to coming up with our most urgent solutions to addressing homelessness. Several of them are with us today, and you'll be hearing from them shortly. For those of you who may be less familiar with All Home, we are a Bay Area organization with a bold mission to really do three things. The first, advance regional solutions to disrupt the cycle of poverty and homelessness. Second, redress the racial disparities that have led to Black, Brown, and Indigenous people experiencing homelessness disproportionately at high rates. And third, to create economic opportunity for extremely low income residents, families, and individuals within the Bay Area. So today is an exciting day. We are releasing our regional action plan. It is a roadmap to significantly reduce unsheltered homelessness in the Bay Area. And when this plan is implemented across the region, we believe that we can reduce homelessness by 75% within 3 years. This crisis has persisted way too long, where many believe in our communities that we cannot end this problem. It is not acceptable for so many of our neighbors to be forced to sleep outside and in conditions not fit for human habitation. We had a full-blown homelessness crisis, folks, before COVID-19. And this plan that we're putting forward today was developed by our Regional Impact Council over the last year and will prioritize two key actions. One, bringing our unhoused neighbors indoors now. And two, keeping our at-risk individuals and families in their homes. Now we're going to walk you through the wrap, and you're going to hear from some of our key members as a part of this webinar today. But I get the pleasure of starting us off with introducing our Mayor of Oakland, Mayor Libby Schaaf, who will serve as our moderator for this webinar. As many of you all know, Mayor Schaaf was first elected mayor of Oakland in 2014. And during her tenure has been incredibly busy. I was able to see that up close and personal. Her 1717 housing plan to increase Oakland's affordable housing production, stabilize rents, and decrease evictions. Her Keep Oakland Housed initiative, the cabin communities. Mayor Schaaf has taken homelessness seriously. It is her priority. And she has been such an active member of our Regional Impact Council. And it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Schaaf.
Thank you so much, Tamika. And what a pleasure it's been to be part of the Regional Council. All Home has convened one of the broadest, deepest coalitions of Bay Area stakeholders to truly create a collective vision for ending homelessness in the Bay Area. I hope that we all agree that homelessness is the moral outrage of our times, especially here in the Bay Area, where we live in the wealthiest region, in the wealthiest state, in the wealthiest nation in the world. This plan has the ability to touch the lives of more than 26,000 individuals, our neighbors, our fellow mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, who unconscionably are calling the streets of the Bay Area their homes. This is the way to solve homelessness, not city by city, county by county, but in a coordinated, collaborative process that looks at the entire region as a holistic area and takes the best evidence-based practices and scales them. We each have learned different things in our local communities. Take in Oakland, Keep Oakland Housed, an innovative partnership to prevent homelessness from happening in the first place. When this was launched in 2017, there was very little like this, both locally and nationally. And yet over time, we've discovered that with focusing and iterating and learning from both evaluation and real life on the ground, that we can actually prevent families from experiencing even a minute of the horror of being without a roof over their heads. Keep Oakland Housed in its first 2 years had what we thought was an ambitious goal to keep 2,000 people from becoming homeless. It actually reached 5,000 people. These are the types of innovations that must be perfected and scaled so that we can actually accomplish the radical and beautiful goal of All Home, and that is to reduce homelessness in the Bay Area by 75% over the next 3 years. It's my pleasure to serve as MC today of the WRAP launch. There are a lot of jokes I could make about that, but I will resist. Of course, the WRAP is the Regional Action Plan, and that is to make that collective impact on homelessness in the Bay Area right now. The urgency of this problem cannot wait. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Ken Kirky, the Chief Partnership Officer of All Home, to provide a brief overview of the Regional Action Plan. Ken.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf. Good morning, everyone. As Mayor Schaaf said, I'm Ken Kirky, Chief Partnership Officer with All Home. And as the Mayor and Tamika have both already mentioned, the plan we are releasing today sets the audacious goal of reducing unsheltered homelessness in the Bay Area by 75% within 3 years. Now, you may be wondering, how are they going to pull that off? Well, first, it's important to understand that the Bay Area has never actually had a plan to dramatically reduce homelessness. It's never had a regional plan for homelessness at all, let alone with a strategy to bring people indoors rapidly, move them towards stability, and keep other residents in our region from becoming homeless in the first place. Starting today, it does. The Regional Action Plan, or the WRAP, lays out a roadmap for reaching this goal through a new framework of allocating resources in every county in the Bay Area. This new framework is called the 1-2-4 framework, and I will get to some details on that in a few minutes. It also outlines an unprecedented broad-based coalition to advocate for policies, program, and funding to achieve the 75% reduction goal. As Tamika mentioned, the WRAP released today represents more than a year of hard work from a wide cross-section of people from across the 9 counties of the Bay Area. They came together in the midst of COVID-19, meeting in settings like this. There are a number of people on these committees I've never met in person, but this group of people known as the Regional Impact Council was convened by All Home and includes community and business leaders, housing and homelessness experts, people with lived experience of being homeless, and elected officials from across the region. You see some of the entities they represent here on the slide. And I think, again, it's important to recognize they met monthly, sometimes twice a month, with a lot of hard work in between. And I have to say, it's truly been an honor to work with this broad section of dedicated people who don't view homelessness as an annoyance or as something to be managed, but as a humanitarian crisis that should be treated as an emergency. Next slide. So as outlined here, the Regional Action Plan recommends a new integrated approach to planning and allocating resources with a simultaneous provision of interim housing options to house and stabilize people currently living outdoors, flexible permanent housing to ensure long-term stability and healing for formerly homeless people, including supportive housing for those who need it, and for others, a housing voucher. And a new framework for homelessness prevention region-wide. As everyone on this webinar knows, the cost of living in the Bay Area is the highest in the nation. It's the highest in North America. As a result, there are many, many people in the Bay Area who are working full time and cannot make ends meet. They are one life hiccup away from becoming homeless. By investing in interventions such as financial assistance and legal services for people at risk of eviction, we can dramatically reduce the number of people in our region who become homeless in the first place. When we apply the framework region-wide, looking at the composition of the homeless population across the Bay Area, the simultaneous provision works out to roughly 1 interim housing option for every 2 permanent housing solutions and 4 homelessness prevention interventions. It's important to note the ratio is not a one-size-fits-all, and it will vary from county to county. For example, the homelessness population in Napa is different from San Francisco, which is different from San Mateo. Next slide. Homelessness services in the Bay Area are delivered to a large degree by counties working with their nonprofit service providers. All Home and our partners will work with county officials and nonprofits in each county to determine the appropriate ratios of investments within each county. Together, we will evaluate the current allocation of resources relative to local needs. We'll align how existing resources are allocated to achieve the 75% reduction goal and use resources as efficiently as possible. And we'll advocate for the additional resources needed to right-size programs and investments to the need in each county. Next slide, please. So, in closing, if you have questions or if your organization is interested in a more detailed presentation, please reach out. You see the link here on the screen. We would be happy to work with you, and we look forward to working with all of you in implementing the Regional Action Plan. With that, I say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Mayor Schaaf.
Thank you, Ken. And this is just an incredible accomplishment today. Thank you for all of your hard work and the entire amazing staff at All Home. Right now, we're going to have a conversation with Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez and All Home founder and CEO Tamika Moss. And we want to draw out what the implications are of this plan and what it means for the community. So Tamika, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk about the development of the plan and why a regional approach was so important?
Absolutely. You know, one of the great fortunes I've had is working across the entire Bay Area on this issue related to homelessness, housing, economic stability, and social justice writ large. Serving as your chief of staff, working with the former Mayor Lee, when I started really digging into understanding how people actually see the Bay Area as one place, you said it, we have points of pride of where we're from. But in terms of how people live and matriculate, we need to tackle homelessness as a regional issue. And it has been really clarified through this process that every city and every county, every community-based organization is doing really great work. But we can't do it in silos. We can't do it by ourselves. And we have to not only collaborate and align across geographies, we also have to align across sectors, across stakeholder groups. Everyone in this region has a responsibility of doing what they can to address this crisis of our time. And it was so critical for when I was conceiving All Home to be an entity that was responsible for lifting up why regionalism matters by supporting jurisdictions who's doing their best every single day, but don't have the opportunity to learn about the best practices, to use evidence to inform how to scale the work. And so our organization was really designed to be an accelerator to that regional collaboration. And that's what makes me so excited about this plan.
Well, thank you. I know we're all excited because it's not just about the emergency response. It is a comprehensive approach to truly end homelessness as we know it today. Supervisor Chavez, why do you support this plan? What are the aspects of it that excite you the most?
I'm really excited to be here today, and Tamika and Mayor Schaaf, just really appreciate the leadership that you've shown that got us here. I think what's most exciting to me is that it's not a choice. You know, often when we see programs, someone says, well, we're going to focus on this part of the problem or this part of the problem, but the recognition that the problem's complex, that we have to look at a long-term solution. This state hasn't built extremely low or very low income housing in the robust nature it needs to, that we have people right now on the street that are suffering. I think Mayor Schaaf, you talked about that, and that we need to do something about that. And I think, you know, just to be on prevention, I mean, one thing we have to all be careful of in government is that we're not spending only on the deep end of the pool, right? That we need to make sure we don't get people in the deep end of the pool. So that's what's exciting to me about this.
Well, thank you. Tamika, one thing that's unique about this plan is the way that it explicitly lifts up racial equity. Racial equity is something that many of us policymakers talk about. It's something that does not have a lot of study or information out there in the realm of homelessness. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about how this plan addresses equity? How does that show up?
Well, you know, I want to say, Supervisor Chavez, we too appreciate your leadership. I mean, Santa Clara County is really an exemplary example of how we need to be doing this work. And the RAP really builds on the extraordinary work that your county has been doing. And you said it, this is not a choice. Racial equity and paying attention to equity is not a choice. We know that homelessness disproportionately impacts our neighbors of color, particularly Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. And unless we not only be explicit, but that we look at tools and strategies to disaggregate our data by race, to assess our programmatic outcomes by race, and understand the cultural competency that we need to have in order to engage the folks who are most impacted by this crisis, then this plan means nothing. So for me, centering racial equity and equity in general at the center of this plan was not a choice. It is how the work needs to be done. We need to get comfortable and familiar with prioritizing folks who are most impacted by this homelessness crisis and be unapologetic about it. And we also need to understand, how do we in fact assess our equity goals as we do implementation? And that's a really key component of how we will be implementing the RAP, Mayor, because from my perspective, and Oakland, I think, gives us another fantastic example of how racial equity through your systems of care and doing the racial equity analysis to understand how this issue is affecting folks, not just at the front door, but as they matriculate through the system. That is a key component of how we plan to implement the RAP.
Yeah, and just to add some kind of example to that, so many of our rental assistance programs are one time. But racial discrimination is not a one-time impact on the lives and families of people of color. And Absolutely. So we know that something like a shallow subsidy program that is not one time, but provides longer term support is a racial equity strategy. And so these are the types of strategies that are lifted up based on evidence, based on research that we know can actually start to close that racial equity gap that is so well documented when we look at how homelessness and housing insecurity disproportionately impacts certain groups here in the Bay Area. Now, Tamika, what does implementation look like related to this plan? How are we going to put it in action? And I want you to be specific. We know that all of our cities and counties have been working on homelessness for a long time. In particular, San Francisco invests huge resources in addressing homelessness. Why is this plan different? Why is it going to have a different impact?
A great question. And I know a lot of folks on this webinar are asking the very same question. As I mentioned earlier, have been working in the Bay Area for 17 years, and I've seen a lot of plans. And I think what makes this one unique is that we, in fact, are looking at, first of all, a regional response to the crisis. We're also not siloing these interventions. I think Supervisor Chavez said this. We are not only making choices, not making choices, we're saying we need to do all of these things together in order to have a significant impact in reducing unsheltered homelessness. We have to invest in prevention. We have to invest in permanent solutions, and we need to invest in interim options to bring our neighbors inside. For so long in public policy, we've made these choices of doing one or the other, and frankly, not doing any of them very well. And so this plan is sort of challenging that notion and saying, you know what, we can and we will combine these interventions and figure out how to resource them, figure out how to implement them at scale. So that's the first thing. The second, as you heard from Ken earlier in the presentation, All Homes work around implementation will first include the Regional Impact Council rolling up its sleeves as it did to create this plan and helping us implement it. We are going to be working with our county partners, our community-based organizations, folks with lived experiences to really understand what's happening in your community and how do we apply this 1-2-4 framework in your community. What do you need? How do you assess the existing resources that you have, that you're spending toward these goals? How do we hold ourselves accountable for the outcomes? I think one of the challenges that we've had, Mayor, is that it's been hard to set outcomes around homelessness and set goals that people really believe that they can achieve. And I think those two components are key to our implementation strategy. And then lastly, this broad coalition that we've built, we've mentioned several times that every sector across the entire spectrum is at the table. We need to activate each of those communities' assets, our philanthropic partners, our private sector partners, our community-based organizations to figure out what in fact they need to facilitate the 75% reduction in homelessness.
Mhm.
Thank you. I know that's very exciting, and we have learned a lot of valuable lessons. I think the Project Home Key response, how quickly, when resources are made available and you're given a timeline, that we can convert existing building stock into housing, permanent, affordable housing for formerly homeless. These are lessons that we're learning here in the Bay Area. It's time for us to institutionalize them and take them to scale. Now, Supervisor Chavez, what are your goals specifically for Santa Clara County as it relates to this plan? You've done a lot of impressive things to date. How will this plan take your county to the next level?
Well, thank you for the question, Mayor. And I think, in 2016, Santa Clara County passed a housing bond, a $950 million housing bond. And we really challenged ourselves to say, we're going to spend this money in 10 years. We're going to be urgent about it. And to date, we have almost $500 million that are committed to projects. We're a little ahead of schedule in terms of commitment. We got to move on the construction. There's a lot, kind of holding us up there. But at our region, we've been able to share that resource with 7 cities. Our goal is to build 4,800 units. And we've even set some money aside for first-time homebuyer. But here's the challenge. And I think that what's great about the regional approach is I think we're going to see the challenge trends. And let me give you an example. All of us in our regions, as we're trying to build this permanent housing, need tax credits to become available much quicker. We need more of them. And we need to have timelines that are more flexible that actually align with the housing production versus whatever the state guidelines are. And I'm not picking on them because actually we have a great program, but it's not fast enough and it doesn't meet the local needs. Now, my guess is that, not guess, but what I know is that as a region, when all of our counties are saying, these are the 4 things that need to change, and by doing that, we're going to up production by Y amount, I think we're going to speak in a much more powerful voice. And what I think that means is that we're going to be able to demonstrate impact regionally more quickly by working together. So my goal is to take our plan that there are pieces of it that are working really well. There are pieces of it that we need to learn from other regions, be part of that learning. But I think the advocacy and the power that comes from unusual suspects working together saying, oh, no. Here are the 4 or 5 things that we need. And if you help us, we're going to be able to help you. And I think Mayor Schaaf raises the best example ever, which is if we treat this like a crisis and we all agree that there are a few linchpins, and it's not going to be one, there's no silver bullet, but a few linchpins, we're going to make change in real time for real people who are really suffering. So that's what's exciting to me about this.
Well, thank you. I share that excitement. Now, my closing question, and feel free to go into some detail. Can you talk about, and this is for both of you, but I'll start with Tamika, what can the Bay Area look like when, and I don't say if, I say when this plan is successful? What will that look like, Tamika?
Well, it will look like today we have, for every person that we house, we have 3 new people falling into homelessness at the same time. If we are focusing on prevention, we will see a reduction in that number. We have folks who are currently on our streets, in encampments, in their cars. When this plan is successful, we will see fewer of our neighbors calling the streets home. We have to increase our housing supply. Supervisor Chavez said it. We do not build enough housing for extremely low income people fast enough. We can't continue to subscribe to the same old housing paradigm of a housing unit costing $700,000 a year and taking 3 to 5 years to build. We have to preserve existing housing. We have to get creative about bringing new housing types onto the market, modular, tiny homes, whatever it takes in order to facilitate permanent exits for people to actually have a permanent safe place to live. Shared housing, like Jamie Almanza is doing at Bay Area County Community Services at BACS, where seniors are living in single family homes together and having permanent housing. We have to employ every creative solution in terms of creating permanent housing exits for folks. I think if we can do those things, the ultimate goal, certainly from All Homes perspective, and I think should be, a priority of the Bay Area, is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. That is what success looks like.
I love it. That is a beautiful, beautiful vision. Supervisor Chavez, what does it look like when this plan is successfully implemented?
I think this is a really, it's an inflection point for our community. And I just want to start with what Mayor Schaaf said at the very beginning of the discussion, which is we live in, one of the wealthiest places, with more people with advanced degrees live here, I think, than almost any other place in the whole world. And we're not just the wealthiest in the nation, it's like in human history, right? Like as a society. So the question really becomes, what do we want our community to be? And I want it to be an equitable place for all, which means that we need to address the income inequality and a whole bunch of other issues. And what's exciting to me about housing is that housing is a health benefit. So coming from a county, here's how I look at housing. By getting more people housed, we're going to more effectively deal with addictions like drug and alcohol, because right now we try to treat people who are addicted to drugs, alcohol, or have other serious mental health issues while they are homeless. While you are homeless. I mean, that is the most backward way you could possibly think about providing services to someone in need that you could even imagine. And so I think by shifting really our lens, we're going to be more, not just more compassionate, not just improve quality of life for a few people, but for everybody. We're actually going to shift the way we treat other human beings. And I think this goes back to the point you were raising, Tamika, early on, which is, if in fact we are going to be a society that takes equity seriously, we're going to demonstrate it with how we spend money, how quickly we attack the problem, and frankly, making investments in our communities in ways that really do have meaningful impact. And then the last thing I just want to say is this, all of us who've been in public service for a long time, there are days you wake up thinking, what are we going to do differently. But when you think about the future, and Tamika, I want to just end on this point that you raised, which is you think about ending the pipeline of homelessness. What you're really talking about there is making sure that children have a safe place to do their homework, that families have a safe place to heal, that if you have diabetes, you're not trying to find food on the street, that you're in a safe, secure environment. And so what we're really talking about is rethinking the way we live together. And what better place in the whole world than this region to do just that?
That is beautiful and powerful. And I really appreciate the comprehensive nature of this regional action plan, the fact that it doesn't see ending homelessness as just putting a roof over someone's head, but actually getting them to a place of self-sufficiency. I've been very active in Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, and the study that came out of Stockton that showed the dramatic and unprecedented impact of just having financial security on an individual's mental health and even their ability to gain full employment. Those are stunning results that everyone should pay attention to. And I know that those kinds of findings are what have informed this comprehensive regional action plan. Now, I'm very excited to turn the mic, the Zoom mic, over to our next speaker. Brandy Jenkins League works for BACS, or Bay Area Community Services, one of the most innovative homeless providers in the Bay Area, and we are proud that they call Oakland home. Now, I want to just quickly shout out BACS and their role in really innovating around homelessness prevention. So often what we see on the streets are the street level interventions, things like cabin communities and navigation centers. What we don't see are all the people that we prevented from experiencing homelessness to begin with. When we started our journey together, and BACS has been the lead partner in Keep Oakland Housed, most rental assistance programs required that in order to receive help, someone had to be facing an eviction. Who that was leaving out were the people who were actually most at risk of becoming homeless. People who weren't facing evictions because they were staying on a friend's couch, staying in a motel, staying in their cars. BACS has been a leader in innovating not only in getting people off the streets and into permanent stable housing through innovative means like shared housing, but also BACS has been an innovator at actually preventing homelessness to begin with and analyzing who is most likely to actually be at risk of homelessness and how do we best serve them in a way that actually gets them back on their feet permanently for good. So it is with that great pleasure that I introduce Brandy Jenkins League to speak about how BACS and other providers are going to play a role in the implementation of the Regional Action Plan. Brandy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Liebman Schaaf, Tamika Moss, and just all of you, Cindy and Kirk. And thank you for being here today and just being able to have the conversation about what we face every day as we drive down the streets. And it's a recognition of all of the people that we, many of them that we've had relationships at some point of friendships, and just seeing them in these conditions. And for me, again, my name is Brandy Jenkins League. I'm the program manager over at the Housing Resource Center. And a lot of things that I contribute to far as with BACS is, again, as she mentioned, Mayor Schaaf, about our innovative housing resources that we have, that we serve TAY youth, adults and older adults across the Bay Area. And, you know, our mission here at BACS is to, uplift the underserved community members and their families by doing whatever it takes. So we began to become creative about what housing looks like and how individuals who don't have enough income and getting creative with those different means of shared housing and all of those different things to meet the need of their income. So I also serve on the Community Advisory Council with All Home. It's a part of, it's myself, like many other individuals who've had first life experience, who are having the conversation. And that's the reason why the Community Advisor Council was created. So I feel very strongly that helping people get housed and stay housed is important, because stabilizing people in their lives, it helps them to become healthy, right? You know, health is a part of the wealth of how we live, right? So it's very important. We have many individuals who are exiting out of incarceration, who are struggling with addiction, job loss, and their lives can never truly be stable without housing. So it's very important that we have this conversation again. I know how it feels to be in housing because I experienced it myself, and it was one of the very challenging experiences in my life. And I grew up in Richmond, and I was a former foster youth, and I endured a lot of different things coming out of the system, and to a system that there was no stability of community resources, and we still face the same situation today. As we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it has made it difficult for people to get on their feet with houses, you know, with offices closed, them not being able to get their Social Security cards, DMV being closed, and just daily tasks that going to the grocery store and getting medication from a pharmacy has become a real challenge. Furthermore, you know, when we talk about daycare and schools being closed, how's that for a single parent who is trying to have the stability of sustaining their lifestyle with contributing to their home? It's difficult for working parents to hold down their jobs and not be able to have the resources for childcare. I was happy to contribute to this development plan because in order for us to successfully support our neighborhoods and many of our community activists who are supporting this narrative, we have to make sure that we are being authentic in the conversation and what it takes to support this mission for, you know, the RIC and the RAP development. So I just wanted to let you know, thank you for having me here today and having this conversation. And I hope to implement most of the RAP and for many months and years to come to be a part of this. And I want to, that is my closing marks. And I just wanted to thank you all for allowing me to speak and kind of talk about the situations that we face today. Thank you.
Brandy, thank you so much. And now I think we're going to wrap up with some closing remarks from Tamika Moss. I cannot emphasize enough how the 1-2-4 framework is not only a model for the Bay Area, it really should be the model for all of California. It is this framework that is really going to help us comprehensively, not just get people off the streets, but prevent them from ever being on the streets to begin with. Tamika, thank you so much for your leadership and your vision. Please wrap us up.
Thank you, Mayor Schaaf, and thank you for being an incredible moderator as usual. Brandy, supervisor, we couldn't do this without you all. And I just want to give a personal shout out to Ken Kirky on my team, who has tirelessly led this effort on our behalf with his 18-year-old son graduating from high school and all that entails. Your leadership is extraordinary, my friend, and we are very grateful for you. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us for this webinar. If you have questions that you've put in the chat, please direct those questions to Nahima Washington. Her information is on our landing page, which you can see here on the screen. We are at allhomesca.org Regional Action Plan. You can learn more details about the plan and any correspondence or questions that anyone has. Please direct those to us immediately. It's going to take the village of everyone on this webinar to help us out and get this plan implemented and actually see the reductions in homelessness and the prosperity that our community deserves. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning.